All right, so how do you think you did? Well, your mathematical computations and reasoning are going to be important skills to answering the questions. And speaking of questions, here with me now to answer some student questions are Dick and Hugh. So let's go to Washington, D.C. and meet up with a group of students from 14 schools that are spending a day with their adoptive business partner, the FAA, in a special event recognizing the 95th anniversary of the Wright Brothers' first flight. On the stage, we have some important leaders to our country in transportation and research, and I'd like to take a moment to introduce our viewers to them. First, we have Mr. Rodney Slater, Secretary of the Department of Transportation. We also have Mrs. Jane Garvey, who is the head of the FAA. And we have Mr. Daniel Golden, the head of NASA, who also has a very special message for our viewers. Mr. Golden. Hi, Mr. Golden. I understand you have some words for us, for our viewers.
Yes, I hope all the students here in Washington and around the country, 700,000 of them, see the kind of tools we use at the FAA to make planes fly safer, at NASA to send the shuttle into space, and they understand that these are real tools and they're going to learn how to use them. And they also understand that if they understand how to use these tools, they'll have good jobs when they grow up and they'll be able to lead our country.
Mr. Golden, thank you. Those are very good words for our viewers. And now, beside Secretary Slater and Mrs. Garvey is a student whom they will introduce. They will have a question for our researchers back here in the studio. So, Mr. Slater, will you introduce your guest, please?
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Ken Wright. Let me just say that I'm here next to Anthony Marino, and we were listening and saying, these are some good questions, I'll tell you. Well, Anthony is a student at the Tuckahoe Elementary School, and he actually has a question that he'd like to ask. Anthony?
Thank you. My question is, how did we navigate before GPS?
Oh, all right. Good question. And let's see, who'd like to answer that?
Hugh.
All right, Hugh, all right.
That's a really good question, because before GPS, people did navigate. And so I think the best way to answer that is to take you back several hundred years ago and show you how some of the early people navigated. Well, one thing people would do is if they'd go to a certain location, as they traveled over the land, they would mark where they went and they'd make a map. And that would become a map and they could give to somebody else and they could navigate the same route. In fact, we still use that today. We have highways, that's a path, and we have road maps, and that's how we get from city to city. So you'll see some of these techniques, even though they're very old, they still use them today. Another technique was developed when we invented the compass. Now, the compass has a needle that points to the north, and if you know what direction you're going to go, you point in that direction and you see the angle, and that's called a bearing. And you follow that bearing, and then you can travel in that direction. Again, the compass is still used today. Any aircraft that you fly in will have a compass.
That's great. So what I'm hearing from you is some of the tools from the past are still being used today.
That is true.
That's great.
It's a combination of all of these tools, and they help back up each other and make sure that you have a more accurate path or direction.
Great. That's a good answer. And I know we've got someone else back there with Mrs. Garvey. So, Mrs. Garvey, could you please introduce for us your guest and then the question, please?
Well, yes, thank you very much. And I am joined by a wonderful young student named Brittany Jones. And Brittany is from Bradbury Heights Elementary School, and she has a question for us today.
Thank you. My question is, how does GPS work?
Great.
All right. How does GPS work? You got something there for us?
Yes, I expected this question, and I used this illustration to try to answer that question. The GPS satellite sends signals down to the Earth, and then the receiver on the Earth makes measurements on these, and the first thing it does is determine the distance or range to those satellites. And so let's let this wire here represent the range from this satellite, and this one the range from this satellite. Then with mathematical equations in the computer of the GPS receiver, it calculates where these ranges intersect, and that becomes your latitude and longitude of your position on Earth.
All right, and that's how Dan and I were able to get where we needed to go. All right, well, I see we're quickly running out of time. Thank you, Dick and Hugh. Oh, but I understand we have a special caller with a message. It's from Senator and astronaut John Glenn. Mr. Glenn, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be able to participate this morning.
Thank you. I understand you have some words for our viewers.
I do indeed, and I'm glad to be able to give some encouragement to our young people today. You know, today is the 95th anniversary of when the first airplane ever lifted off the ground under powered flight. When the Wright brothers made that first flight from Kill Devil Hill down in North Carolina. And it wasn't a very long flight, but they were the first people to ever get airborne in a powered vehicle. And ever since then, we've been trying to go higher and faster and higher and faster, and we're into space now. And you might even look at the Wright brothers as the first astronauts, if you wanted to look at it that way. Now, they didn't get where they were and make their discoveries by just having an interest in it. You know, they were people who studied things. They made little wind tunnels at the time. They did the mathematical measurements. They had to know their mathematics, and they had to have a scientific mind. And that's what we like to encourage in all our young people today. You just have to have the background that you get from school with regard to math and reading skills and all those other things. And that's the good part about being in school. You all have the ability and the place that you're at now in school to do all those same things and make tremendous contributions in the future, just like the Wright brothers did 95 years ago.
Senator Glenn, thank you. Powerful words there, and appreciate it. Now, if you want to discover more ways researchers are using GPS, then check out our website. And for those of you interested in the world of transportation, check out the online resources of our program partners. We're going to have to say goodbye now. Let's wrap up. Thanks, program partners, and all our guests. Thank you.
Our website. Here you will engage in an online road rally that will take you to 5 continents with a checkpoint on each continent as seen from space.